The incessant clang of metal against metal echoed throughout the dimly lit maintenance shaft. Finn Rilo wiped the sweat from his brow with the back of his hand, leaving a dark smudge across his forehead. The temperature regulator in Sector 7 had been malfunctioning for 3 days now, but station management had only marked it as low priority. Low priority meant the residents would continue to freeze while bureaucrats, sitting comfortably in their climate-controlled offices, decided when it was cost-effective to authorize repairs. Finn muttered a curse as he forced the wrench against a stubborn valve. The tools provided by EOS 9 management were as neglected as the station itself. Worn, outdated, and barely functional. Just like everything else in this forgotten corner of space. "Come on, you piece of junk," he growled, putting his full weight behind the wrench until the valve finally gave way with a hiss of escaping pressure. A small victory in an endless series of battles against entropy. He'd been stationed on EOS 9 for 3 years, 7 months, and 22 days. Not that he was counting. The remote space station served as a refueling depot and minor trading post on the fringes of civilized space. Home to those with nowhere else to go or something to hide. For Finn, it was both. By the time he finished the repairs, his shift had extended 2 hours beyond schedule. Unpaid overtime, naturally. Station Manager Belkin would simply shrug and remind him that his contract allowed for flexible working hours as needed. The residents of Sector 7 would have heat tonight, though, and that counted for something, even if gratitude was as rare as fresh food on EOS 9. Finn's quarters were located in a converted storage module on the station's underside, far from the already meager amenities of the main habitat ring. The room was barely 12 by 15 feet, with exposed conduits running across the ceiling and walls patched with salvaged metal plates. A narrow cot occupied one corner, opposite a compact kitchenette that consisted of little more than a heating element and a tiny refrigeration unit. The bathroom was a closet-sized space with a shower head that dripped continuously, despite his numerous attempts to fix it. Home sweet home. He tossed his tool belt onto the small table that doubled as his desk and work surface, then collapsed onto the cot. The springs creaked in protest. Even after a 16-hour shift, sleep often eluded him. In the quiet moments, when the constant background hum of the station's life support systems was the only sound, memories would surface. Earth's blue skies, the scent of rain, his sister's laugh, the look on his commanding officer's face when Finn had refused the order, the court-martial, the choice between prison or exile to the frontier. Some nights, he wasn't sure he'd made the right choice. Finn had just closed his eyes when a sharp, rhythmic knock at his door jolted him upright. Nobody visited him, ever. Station residents kept to themselves, and the only time management sought him out was to assign more repair jobs. He approached the door cautiously. "Who is it?" No answer came, just another series of urgent knocks. Finn sighed and pressed the access panel. The door slid open with a mechanical groan. The woman standing in the corridor was like nothing he had ever seen on EOS 9. Tall and slender, with pale lavender skin that seemed to emit a subtle luminescence. Her hair, if it could be called hair, was a cascade of silver-white tendrils that moved slightly as though suspended in water. Large, almond-shaped eyes of deep indigo regarded him with a mixture of determination and barely concealed panic. She wore what must have once been ceremonial attire, an elaborate gown of shimmering fabric that flowed like liquid metal, accented with crystalline embellishments that caught the harsh fluorescent lighting. But the hem was frayed, one sleeve bore a tear that had been hastily mended, and a faint layer of space dust dulled its luster. This was finery that had seen better days. For several seconds, Finn could only stare. She was clearly Tellurian, a species known for their aristocratic society and isolationist policies. What one was doing on EOS 9, and at his door specifically, defied explanation. Finrido. Her voice had a musical quality, with an accent that made his name sound exotic. He nodded dumbly. "I require your assistance in a matter of extreme urgency." She glanced nervously over her shoulder. "May I enter? It is not safe to speak in the corridor." Every instinct told Finn to close the door. Nothing good ever came from getting involved in a stranger's problems, especially not on a station like EOS 9. Yet something in those indigo eyes, a genuine fear behind the composed facade, made him step aside. "You've got 5 minutes to explain," he said as she swept past him. The Tellurian woman surveyed his quarters with an unreadable expression before turning to face him. She stood unnaturally still, only the slight movement of her tendrils indicating she was a living being rather than a statue. "My name is Nishura Valquin, House of Imperial Twilight, second daughter to the High Consort of the Seventh Dominion." She recited her lineage like a well-rehearsed introduction, though there was a tremor in her voice. "And I need you to marry me within the next 71 hours and 23 minutes. Finn had expected many things. A request to smuggle something, hide her from authorities, perhaps even medical assistance for an injury. Marriage was not on that list. He laughed. It wasn't kind, but nothing about EOS 9 fostered kindness. "Lady, I don't know what game you're playing, but you've got the wrong guy. This is no game." The musical quality of her voice hardened. "My husband, Lord Xanthian of House Eternal Dawn, died 3 hours and 37 minutes ago. Under the ancient widow's protocol of the Galactic Covenant, I have precisely 72 standard hours to secure a new legal union, where I forfeit all rights, properties, and personal freedoms associated with my station." Finn crossed his arms. "And that's my problem, because you meet all the necessary criteria for an emergency successor spouse under Section 12.9 of the protocol. You have no significant debt holdings, no criminal record, at least none accessible through standard registry channels, no conflicting alliances with noble houses, and most importantly, no political value that would trigger a diplomatic incident." She delivered this assessment with clinical detachment. "You've been researching me." It wasn't a question, and Finn felt a chill that had nothing to do with the station's faulty temperature controls. "I researched 17 potential candidates on this station. You were the only viable option. Lucky me." His voice dripped sarcasm. "And what exactly do I get out of this arrangement, besides the pleasure of being number 17 on your list?" Nishura reached into a concealed pocket and withdrew a small, crystalline device that projected a holographic document. "Full legal protection under my house's banner. Immediate clearance of all outstanding debts. A monthly stipend equivalent to 10 times your current salary. And," she paused, something shifting in her expression, a vulnerability briefly eclipsing her composed facade, "I will warm your bed." The last part was delivered with such pragmatic directness that Finn nearly choked. "You'll what?" "I understand human males value physical companionship. I'm offering it as part of our arrangement." Finn ran a hand through his hair, trying to process the absurdity of the situation. A Tellurian noblewoman offering herself to him like some kind of transaction. It was either the most elaborate con he'd ever encountered or the most desperate act of a truly desperate woman. "Why me? Really?" he pressed. "There must be better options than a human maintenance worker on a forgotten station." Nishura's tendrils rippled in what might have been the Tellurian equivalent of a sigh. "The protocol requires a spouse with no possible claim to my husband's titles or properties through lineage or political connection. It must be someone who cannot be manipulated by my husband's enemies, which eliminates anyone from the 17 major species with representation in the Galactic Senate. It must also be someone who can be reasonably claimed to have formed a legitimate bond within the allowed time frame." She stepped closer, and Finn caught a scent like night-blooming flowers. "You are invisible, Finn Rilo. That makes you perfect." "Invisible?" He laughed bitterly. "Can't argue with that assessment." Nishura extended the crystalline device. "This contract is binding under both Galactic and Tellurian law. It includes a dissolution clause that can be activated after 1 standard year, with no penalty to either party. Until then, we must maintain the appearance of a legitimate union." Finn didn't take the device. "What happens if you don't find someone in time?" Her composure slipped, just for a moment. "I'll become classified as unclaimed property. My husband's political rivals in House Obsidian Vale will file for custody. Their treatment of acquisitions is not known for its mercy. Her voice had dropped to just above a whisper. I would rather die. The raw fear in those words struck something in Finn that he thought had died years ago. Empathy. He'd come to EOS 9 to escape his past, to disappear into the background radiation of a universe. He'd succeeded too well. He was invisible, just as she said, a ghost still breathing. What did he have to lose? His glorious career, maintaining broken equipment for ungrateful residents? His luxurious living quarters? His bright future of slow decay on a station that was itself slowly decaying? Or perhaps the better question was, what did he have to gain? Not just financial security, though that was significant, but purpose. Someone to protect, something to stand against, even if just for a year. And maybe, just maybe, a way off this station eventually. 72 hours, you said? He asked, reaching for the contract. Nishura's eyes widened slightly, the first genuine reaction he'd seen from her. 71 hours and 16 minutes now, she corrected. Then we'd better get this signed. Finn pressed his thumb against the device's scanner. It hummed, recording his biometric signature. I hope neither of us regrets this. Nishura placed her palm over the contract, her long, slender fingers splaying across its surface. The device glowed briefly before emitting a soft chime. The union is registered, she said, the tension in her shoulders easing marginally. Thank you, Finn Rilo. Just Finn is fine, he replied. Since we're married now, and all. She nodded solemnly. Finn. His name and her accented voice sounded like a different word entirely. He gestured around the tiny room. Welcome home, I guess. It's not exactly what you're used to, I imagine. Accommodations are irrelevant compared to survival, she said, but her eyes darted around the cramped space with what might have been trepidation. Finn suddenly realized the absurdity of their situation. He had just legally married an alien aristocrat he'd met 5 minutes ago, and now she was standing in his squalid quarters, still in her formal, if somewhat tattered, regalia. I only have the one bed, he said awkwardly. Nishura studied the narrow cot with an unreadable expression. I require minimal rest compared to humans. We can establish a rotation. Right, a rotation. Finn raked his fingers through his hair again, a nervous habit. Look, I got an early shift tomorrow. You take the bed tonight. I'll figure something out. She tilted her head slightly. This contradicts our arrangement. I stated I would warm your bed. Yeah, about that. Let's put a pin in that particular aspect of our union. For now, okay. It's been a long day, and I just got married. To someone I met 5 minutes ago. The faintest hint of what might have been relief crossed Nishura's features. As you wish. Finn grabbed a spare blanket from a storage compartment and tossed it onto the floor beside the cot. Home sweet home, he muttered, mostly to himself. He couldn't have imagined that by the next day, his life would become even more complicated. The blaring of Finn's alarm felt particularly offensive after his night on the floor. Every muscle protested as he sat up, momentarily disoriented by the sight of the Tellurian woman perched on the edge of his cot. Nishura hadn't changed from her ceremonial attire, and she sat with perfect posture, her tendrils swaying gently as she manipulated a small, translucent device in her hands. Good morning, she said without looking up. You make considerable noise while sleeping. Your breathing patterns are irregular, and you spoke several names. Particularly someone called Elise. Finn Grimot. Early riser, huh? And apparently a keen observer. He stood, stretching his back with an audible pop. Elise is my sister. We haven't spoken in years. Nishura's eyes flickered briefly to him before returning to her device. The cubic dimensions of this habitat are insufficient for 2 occupants. We should address this. Good morning to you too, Finn muttered. He shuffled to the tiny bathroom, grateful for the brief privacy it afforded. When he emerged, Nishura had set aside her device and was examining his tool belt with curious fingers. Your instruments are primitive, she observed. This calibrator is at least 3 generations obsolete. Station management isn't known for its generous equipment budget, Finn replied, retrieving the belt from her hands. Look, I've got to go to work. You should probably, he trailed off, realizing he had no idea what a Tellurian noblewoman would do all day in a cramped maintenance worker's quarters. Nishura stood. I will accompany you. What? No, absolutely not. My supervisor already hates me. Showing up with a... He gestured vaguely at her ethereal appearance. With you would raise too many questions. We must begin establishing the validity of our union immediately. The Dominion Registry will dispatch verification officers within days. They will interview station residents and review surveillance data. Our interactions must appear natural and established. Finn groaned. She was right, of course, but that didn't make the prospect of introducing his alien wife to his co-workers any less daunting. Fine, but you can't go around in that, he said, pointing to her ceremonial attire. Do you have anything less conspicuous? Nishura reached into a small bag she'd placed beside the cot, something Finn hadn't noticed the night before, and extracted a simple, dark jumpsuit of a material he didn't recognize. Without warning, she began unfastening her elaborate gown. Whoa, Finn! Spun around, facing the wall. A little privacy? Privacy during changing is a cultural taboo for humans? She asked, genuine curiosity in her voice. Between strangers, yes. Definitely yes. We are legally bonded, she pointed out, though he heard the rustle of fabric paws. Still, just let me know when you're done. After a moment, Nishura spoke. I am adequately attired. Finn turned to find her in the jumpsuit, which conformed perfectly to her slender frame. Without the elaborate gown, she appeared less otherworldly, though still strikingly alien with her lavender skin and moving tendrils. She'd done something to the latter, binding them back in a style that resembled a human ponytail. Better, he admitted. But about those... He gestured to her tendrils. Nishura extracted a simple cap from her bag and tucked her tendrils beneath it. The effect was jarring. With her most distinctive feature hidden, she could almost pass for a human with an unusual skin condition. Is this acceptable? She asked. It'll have to do. Look, just follow my lead, okay? And maybe don't mention the whole noble house thing. Let's say you're a technician I met during a supply transfer. Nishura regarded him with what might have been amusement. I am capable of fabricating a credible background narrative, Finn. I served as diplomatic liaison for my house for 7 cycles. Right, of course. He felt vaguely embarrassed for underestimating her. Let's go then, and try to look normal. Define normal in this context. Finn sighed. It was going to be a long day. Contrary to Finn's expectations, Nishura adapted to EOS 9's environment with remarkable ease. She followed him through the station's corridors, observing everything with quiet intensity. When they reached the maintenance hub, she stood slightly behind him, the picture of unobtrusive support. Station Manager Belkin looked up from his terminal as they entered, his perpetual scowl deepening at the sight of Nishura. Rilo, who's this? Finn cleared his throat. This is Nishura, my wife. The word felt foreign on his tongue. Belkin's eyebrows shot up. Wife? Since when? Yesterday, Finn replied, sticking as close to the truth as possible. Short ceremony. Very private. Belkin looked between them suspiciously. Didn't know you were seeing anyone, Rilo. You never asked, Finn countered, a touch of defiance in his voice. I can assist with maintenance tasks, Nishura interjected smoothly. I am proficient in standard repair protocols. Belkin snorted. We don't hire couples in the same department. Security risk. He turned back to his terminal. Rilo, there's a pressure leak in Habitat Ring C. Fix it, and leave your wife somewhere else. As they left the maintenance hub, Finn noticed several of his co-workers staring openly at Nishura. Whispers followed them down the corridor. Great. By midday, the entire station would be buzzing with rumors about the maintenance worker who suddenly showed up with an exotic-looking wife. That went well, Finn muttered sarcastically as they reached the access corridor to Habitat Ring C. He displays typical authoritarian security, Nishura observed. His immediate rejection of my assistance suggests fear of competence that might challenge his position. Finn couldn't help but laugh. That's Belkin, all right. Look, you should head back to my quarters while I handle this repair. Unacceptable. We must be seen together to establish our narrative. Nishura, I can't do my job with you hovering over my shoulder. She considered this. I will remain at a sufficient distance to allow your work while maintaining visibility as your spouse. Before Finn could argue further, the station's emergency sirens blared. Red warning lights flashed along the corridor walls. Attention, all personnel, the automated system announced. Atmospheric pressure dropping in Section C7. Emergency bulkheads initiating in 30 seconds. That's where I'm heading, Finn said, breaking into a run. To his surprise, Nishura kept pace effortlessly. They reached Section C7 just as the residents were evacuating. The pressure leak was worse than reported. A maintenance panel had completely detached from the wall, exposing the section to the vacuum sealing layer. If that layer failed, the entire section would decompress. Finn immediately went to work, pulling tools from his belt. The emergency bulkheads would seal the section soon, buying time, but the residents couldn't be displaced indefinitely. He needed to fix this, and quickly. Hand me the molecular sealant, he said absently, reaching back without looking. To his surprise, the correct tool pressed into his palm immediately. He glanced over his shoulder to see Nishura standing there, his tool belt open precisely at the pocket containing the sealant. The panel mounting brackets have corroded, she observed. That is the primary failure point. Finn blinked. Yeah, how did you know? That. The discoloration pattern is consistent with oxidative degradation of substandard alloys. This station uses MX47 composite for structural elements, which is known to fail when exposed to the particular coolant mixture used in these systems. He stared at her. You know about station engineering? I supervised the modernization of 3 orbital platforms in the 7th Dominion, she replied matter-of-factly. The principles are universal, though your technology is rudimentary. The bulkhead warning sounded again. 15 seconds to sealing. We need to get out of here, Finn said, gathering his tools. The repair is incomplete. The molecular sealant will not bond properly without proper bracket alignment. Without hesitation, Nishura took the plasma cutter from his belt and made 2 precise incisions in the remaining brackets. What are you doing? Finn demanded, creating a stress dispersal pattern. It will hold until proper repairs can be made. She worked with swift, confident movements. Apply the sealant now, concentrated at these points. She indicated 3 spots along the panel edge. 10 seconds to bulkhead sealing. Finn hesitated only briefly before following her instructions. The sealant flowed exactly where she had indicated, forming a solid bond. 5 seconds. Come on, he yelled, grabbing her arm and running for the bulkhead entrance. They slipped through just as the massive metal doors began to close, sealing the section behind them. In the corridor outside, they both leaned against the wall, catching their breath. Finn looked at Nishura with new eyes. You know your way around repairs, he said finally. I stated as much. There was the faintest hint of smugness in her tone. Yeah, but saying and doing are different things. He studied her curiously. Don't take this the wrong way, but you don't strike me as the get-your-hands-dirty type. My position required comprehensive knowledge of all systems under my jurisdiction. Theory without practical application is meaningless. She adjusted her cap, ensuring her tendrils remained hidden. Your technique is unrefined but effective. You adapt well to suboptimal conditions. Coming from her, it felt like high praise. Thanks, I think. A slow clap interrupted their moment. Finn turned to see Garza, one of the station's security officers, approaching with a smirk. Rilo, heard you got hitched. Garza's gaze lingered on Nishura. Lucky man. Very lucky. Finn stepped slightly in front of Nishura, a protective gesture that surprised even himself. What do you want, Garza? Just saying hello to the newlyweds. Garza's smile didn't reach his eyes. Interesting timing, though. Passenger manifest shows no new arrivals in the past week, but suddenly you've got a wife. He nodded toward Nishura. Makes a man wonder. I arrived via private courier, Nishura stated calmly. My transportation would not appear on standard manifests. Is that right? Garza looked skeptical. Well, I'm sure you won't mind verifying that with station security. Just procedure, you understand. She doesn't need to verify anything, Finn said, tension creeping into his voice. Unless you're officially detaining us. Garza held up his hands in mock surrender. Just being thorough, Rilo. We get all sorts passing through. Smugglers, fugitives, people running from complicated situations. His gaze fixed meaningfully on Nishura. Station security takes these matters seriously. We appreciate your diligence, Nishura replied smoothly. However, as my husband stated, unless you have specific concerns, we have repairs to complete. Finn noticed something in her tone, a subtle shift from the technician persona to something more commanding. It was barely perceptible, but Garza seemed to respond to it unconsciously, straightening slightly. Of course. Garza stepped back. Welcome to EOS 9, Mrs. Rilo. I'm sure we'll talk again soon. As he walked away, Finn released a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. He's going to be trouble. He is observant but lacks accurate information, Nishura said. A manageable threat. Manageable? He's station security. If he starts digging, then we ensure his findings support our narrative. She touched his arm lightly. This is not my first diplomatic engagement, Finn. Perception management is a fundamental skill of my position. The casual touch startled him almost as much as her confidence. Right. Well, we should finish the repair. The temporary fix won't hold forever. For the rest of the day, they worked together on various maintenance tasks throughout the station. To Finn's increasing amazement, Nishura proved to be not just knowledgeable, but highly skilled. She quickly learned the station's outdated systems and even improved several of his repair solutions with efficient modifications. By the time they returned to his quarters that evening, word of their marriage had spread throughout the station. They had received curious glances, whispered comments, and even a few congratulations from residents Finn barely knew. Inside the small room, Finn collapsed onto the chair at his workbench. Everyone's talking about us. Good. Widespread knowledge of our union serves our purpose. Nishura removed her cap, allowing her tendrils to flow freely. They moved more energetically now, as if relieved to be released from confinement. What happens now? Finn asked. How long until these verification officers show up? 3 days, perhaps 4. The Dominion moves quickly in matters involving noble house succession. She sat on the edge of the cot, her posture perfect despite the day's physical labor. We must use this time to establish convincing patterns of cohabitation. Meaning, we must learn each other's habits, preferences, histories. A legitimate union would include intimate knowledge of one's partner. She spoke clinically, but there was a new hesitancy in her voice. The verification will include both separate and joint questioning, biometric monitoring for truthfulness, and observation of interaction patterns. Finn rubbed his face tiredly. So we have to become experts on each other in 3 days. Great. It is necessary, she insisted. The consequences of failure. I know. Unclaimed property. House Obsidian Vale. No mercy. He sighed. Fine. Where do we start? Nishura reached in her bag and extracted a small, cube-shaped device. When activated, it projected a 3-dimensional grid throughout the room. This will create a privacy field. Station surveillance will record only a blank visual and standard audio patterns. You had this the whole time? Why didn't you use it last night? It requires substantial energy and can only operate for limited periods. She adjusted several settings on the device. We should use it strategically during times when intimate conversation would be expected between newly bonded pairs. The implication hung in the air between them. Finn cleared his throat. Right. Intimate conversation. I will begin. Nishura straightened, as if preparing for a formal presentation. I was born in the 7th Dominion, 3rd daughter of House Imperial Twilight. My mother. Wait, Finn interrupted. This isn't how people get to know each other. It's not an intelligence briefing. She tilted her head, genuinely puzzled. How do humans exchange personal information? More naturally, through conversation, questions, and answers. He moved to sit beside her on the cot, maintaining a respectful distance. For example, why did you marry your first husband? Was it arranged or? A shadow passed over Nishura's features. It was strategic, an alliance between houses to consolidate resource claims in the outer sectors. Her tendrils curled inward slightly. Xanthian was acceptable, not cruel, though not particularly attentive. He was 312 years your standard measure when we were bonded. I was 64. 64? Finn couldn't hide his surprise. How old are you now? 79. Still quite young for a Telerian. Our natural lifespan approaches 5 centuries. Finn tried to process this. The alien woman beside him, who appeared roughly his equivalent age, was actually decades older. And Xanthian? How did he? She completed his hesitant question. Cellular degradation. Not unexpected at his age, though the timing was unfortunate. Her gaze dropped to her hands. He was not beloved to me, but neither did I wish for his death. The candor in her admission touched something in Finn. I'm sorry. Your sympathy is unnecessary, but appreciated. She looked up at him. Now you must share equivalent personal information. Finn laughed swiftly. That's fair. What do you want to know? Why are you on this station? Your skills exceed the requirements of your position. You could command higher compensation elsewhere. The question hit closer to home than he expected. I was in the Earth Defense Force, Engineering Division. 5 years ago, during the border dispute with the Centauri settlements, my commanding officer ordered my team to retrofit civilian transports with faulty radiation shielding. We were behind schedule, and Command wanted the transports operational immediately. He paused, the memory still raw. I refused, said we needed another 2 days to install proper shielding. My CO insisted, said the mission was vital to planetary security. I still refused. It got ugly. I was court-martialed for insubordination. The transports would have exposed civilians to harmful radiation, Nishura observed. Yeah, the faulty shielding would have leaked within weeks. Slow, painful deaths for everyone on board. Finn shook his head. I was given a choice. 10 years in a military prison or voluntary reassignment to frontier stations with a permanent mark on my record. Ich chose exil. You sacrificed your career to protect others. Her voice had softened. That is honorable. Didn't feel honorable at the time. Felt like I'd thrown everything away. He gave a bitter smile. My sister, Elise, the one I apparently talk about in my sleep, she begged me to just follow orders, do my time in the EDF, come home with honors. She hasn't spoken to me since the court-martial. Our parents died when we were young. She was all the family I had. You have been alone, Nishura said, not as a question, but as a simple observation. Yeah, by choice mostly. Easier that way. They sat in silence for a moment. The hum of the station's life support systems the only sound. Your turn, Finn said finally. Tell me something real. Not your noble lineage or diplomatic duties. Something about you. Nishura seemed to consider this carefully. I collect extinct botanical specimens, she said eventually. It is considered an unusual hobby among my kind. We typically value only that which perpetuates or evolves. I find beauty in the finality of extinction, the last expression of a genetic line, preserved at the moment of its ending. That's morbid and beautiful at the same time, Finn admitted. My collection was extensive, over 700 specimens from across the known sectors. Her tendrils drooped slightly. It remains in my former residence. I was unable to retrieve it before fleeing. Is that what you did? Flee. She nodded, a human gesture she had adopted. When Xanthian died, I had precisely 12 minutes before the house registry was updated. His rivals in House Obsidian Vale had surveillance on our compound. I knew they would move immediately to claim me as unclaimed property once the protocol activated. I took only what I could carry and departed via a maintenance courier I had previously secured as a contingency. You planned for this? Finn was impressed despite himself. I planned for many contingencies. One does not survive the noble houses without foresight. She looked around the tiny room, though I did not specifically envision this exact scenario. Finn chuckled. Yeah, I bet emergency marriage to a human maintenance worker wasn't high on your list of escape plans. To his surprise, the corners of Nishura's mouth lifted in what might have been a smile. It transformed her face, making her seem suddenly younger, more vulnerable. It was not, she admitted, though it has proven more interesting than anticipated. The moment felt strangely intimate, two outcasts sharing confidences in a tiny room on a forgotten station. Finn became acutely aware of how close they were sitting, of the faint, otherworldly scent of her. "We should rest," he said, breaking the moment. "Early shift tomorrow." Nishura nodded and deactivated the privacy cube. The projection grid disappeared, returning the room to its normal state. "I will take the floor this night," she announced. Equitable rotation is logical. Finn started to protest, but recognized the determination in her expression. "All right, but at least take the blanket." As they settled into their respective sleeping arrangements, Finn found himself staring at the ceiling, processing all that had transpired in the past 24 hours. Beside his cot, he could hear Nishura's soft, rhythmic breathing. "Finn," her voice came unexpectedly in the darkness. "Yeah, thank you." Such simple words, yet they carried a weight he couldn't fully comprehend. "You're welcome," he replied, and was surprised to realize he meant it. The following day brought new challenges as they continued their crash course in performing a convincing marriage. They had established a tentative routine, working together during Finn's shifts, using their evenings to exchange personal histories and develop their cover story. Nishura proved to be an adept student of human behavior, quickly adapting to station customs and Finn's particular habits. It was during their third evening together, as they shared a sparse meal of reconstituted protein and synthetic vegetables, that the station's alert system blared to life. "Attention, all personnel. Incoming diplomatic vessel requesting emergency docking authorization. Security protocols Alpha 7 now in effect." Finn and Nishura froze, their eyes meeting across the small table. Her tendrils coiled tightly against her scalp, a sign of alarm. Finn had learned. "That's not your verification officers, is it?" he asked, already knowing the answer from her expression. "No." Her voice was tight. "Verification would not arrive via diplomatic vessel. This is something else." She stood abruptly. "We must prepare." "Prepare for what exactly?" Finn rose as well, watching as Nishura retrieved her bag and began extracting various small devices. House Obsidian Vale maintains significant influence within the diplomatic corps. They may have dispatched representatives to challenge our union before verification can confirm it. She activated one of the devices, which projected a holographic display of the station's docking bay. "We need more information." Finn was impressed yet again by her resourcefulness. "You hacked into station security, a rudimentary system," she replied absently, focused on the display. The image showed a sleek vessel, much more advanced than anything Finn had seen dock at EOS 9 before. Its hull bore the distinctive markings of a Dominion diplomatic courier. "That's not good," he muttered. "No." Nishura's voice had taken on a new edge, something between fear and determination. "The insignia indicates a judicial overseer. They have authority to invalidate unions under specific circumstances." "Can they do that?" "We signed a legal contract. They cannot invalidate without cause, but they can delay verification while investigating supposed irregularities." Her tendrils writhed in agitation. "This would extend beyond my 72-hour window, effectively achieving their goal." Finn felt a surge of protective anger that surprised him with its intensity. "Then we don't give them any cause. We're just a happily married couple, right? Nothing to investigate." Nishura looked at him, her indigo eyes filled with doubt. "The physical markers of a genuine bond are difficult to falsify. Pheromone patterns, biorhythmic synchronization, pupillary responses to proximity. These are among the indicators they will examine." "Meaning what exactly?" She hesitated. "Meaning our performance must be more than convincing. It must be authentic." There was a new tension between them, an unspoken understanding of what authentic might entail. Before Finn could respond, another announcement echoed through the station. "Attention personnel. All residents are reminded that interference with diplomatic proceedings is prohibited under Sector Ordinance 15.7. The southern quadrant of Habitat Ring B will be restricted to authorized personnel only until further notice. That's where the diplomatic quarters are, Finn noted. At least they're not coming straight for us. They will establish official presence first, then begin their investigation, Nishura explained. Protocol requires formal notification before direct intervention. We have perhaps 12 hours. 12 hours to become a convincingly married couple. Finn ran a hand through his hair. No pressure. We have made progress, Nishura said, with what might have been an attempt at reassurance. You no longer flinch when I touch your arm. I have mastered the correct preparation of your preferred morning stimulant. These are established patterns that observers would expect. Finn couldn't help but smile at her clinical assessment. Yeah, knowing how I take my coffee is definitely the foundation of a solid marriage. Is it not? She appeared genuinely confused. I'm joking, Nisura. Partly, anyway. His smile faded. But you're right. We need to step up our game. What else would a real couple know about each other? They spent the next several hours in intense preparation, activating the privacy cube to shield their conversations from surveillance. Nishura created flash learning modules for Finn, containing essential information about Tellurian customs, her personal history, and the intricate politics of the noble houses. In turn, Finn shared details of his life on Earth, his engineering training, and the small personal preferences that a spouse would naturally know. Your sister's name is Elise, Nishura recited. Your parents were Catherine and James Rilo. Your father taught engineering at the Moscow Technical Institute before his death from respiratory failure at age 57. Your mother was a concert violinist who died 3 years later in a transport accident. You dislike morel root extract in your food. It causes a mild allergic reaction. You sleep primarily on your left side. You prefer manual tools to automated ones when possible. Your identification number in the Earth Defense Force was ECF 7729 Alpha. Impressive, Finn acknowledged. What about you? Birth name, Nishura Navalkin E.T. Lumina. Third daughter of Consort Thaxalia and Lord Regent Valquin. Prefers thermal regulation slightly higher than human standard comfort levels. Allergic to synthahol, but not natural fermentation. Right dominant, but trained for ambidextrous precision. 15 degrees in various scientific and diplomatic disciplines, including comparative xenobiology and quantum field theory. He paused. Did I miss anything important? You omitted my ceremonial titles and cultural designations, but those are unlikely to arise in questioning. She seemed pleased with his recitation. This is adequate for basic verification. Basic verification, Finn repeated. What about the advanced stuff? The biorhythms and pupillary responses you mentioned. Nishura's tendrils curled inward, embarrassment he had learned. Those reactions cannot be memorized. They are autonomic responses to genuine emotional and physical connection. So what do we do about those? She hesitated, then reached out slowly and placed her hand on his. Her skin was cooler than a human's, with a slight texture that reminded him of satin. Physical proximity, conditioning can induce some of the necessary biological markers. Finn looked down at their joined hands, surprised by how natural it felt despite the alien quality of her touch. Proximity conditioning, huh? Is that what they call it in noble houses? The corners of her mouth lifted in that subtle, almost smile he was coming to recognize. The terminology is clinical, yes. The practice need not be. There was a new note in her voice, something almost playful beneath the formal cadence. It caught Finn off guard, sending an unexpected warmth through him. What are you suggesting? He asked, his voice lower than he intended. In response, Nishura moved closer, the space between them on the cot diminishing. Verification officers will expect to observe comfort with physical proximity, casual touches, shared space. Her indigo eyes held his. Certain pheromone patterns consistent with attraction. And how exactly do we generate those? Finn was acutely aware of her closeness now, of the subtle, otherworldly scent of her. The biological mechanisms are similar across many species, she said softly. Proximity, touch, shared experiences that trigger endorphin release. As if to demonstrate, her hand moved from his to his forearm, fingers tracing lightly up to his shoulder. The touch sent an unexpected shiver through him. "That seems effective," he managed to say, his mouth suddenly dry. Nishura's tendrils rippled in what he now recognized as amusement. "Your pupillary dilation suggests agreement." Before he could respond, the room's communication panel chimed, indicating an incoming station-wide message. Nishura withdrew her hand, and Finn felt its absence like a sudden chill. "Attention, all personnel. By order of Judicial Overseer Carthex, representative of the Dominion Central Authority, a census verification will commence at 0800 hours tomorrow. All residents are required to present valid identification and respond to official inquiries. Noncompliance will result in detention." In transmission. "Census verification," Finn echoed. "That's their pretext for investigating us?" "A standard approach," Nishura confirmed. "Broad action to conceal targeted interest." Her composure had returned, but Finn noticed her tendrils remained slightly unsettled. "They will come for us tomorrow. Then we better be ready." Finn took a deep breath. "What do we need to do?" "We should complete our proximity conditioning," she replied, businesslike again. "And then rest. Mental acuity will be essential during questioning." "Right. Proximity conditioning." Finn nodded, trying to match her practical tone despite the lingering effect of her touch. "How? Where do we proceed?" In answer, Nishura moved to stand in front of him. "Place your hands on my waist," she instructed. Finn complied, acutely aware of the slender form beneath his palms, of how fragile she seemed despite her evident strength and resilience. Her skin radiated a subtle warmth through the fabric of her jumpsuit. "Now I will reciprocate," she said, placing her hands on his shoulders. The position brought them close, almost embracing. This is a standard posture of affection among bonded pairs. Among Telerians, maybe. Humans have a few different standards. "Demonstrate," she requested simply. Finn hesitated, then gently pulled her closer, one hand moving to the small of her back in a more natural embrace. "Like this," he murmured. Nishura allowed herself to be guided, adapting to the new position with graceful ease. "This is preferred. It's more natural, less formal." Her closeness was affecting his concentration, the subtle scent of her more pronounced now. A real couple wouldn't be so positioned. "I see." She adjusted slightly, her body relaxing against his. "Is this improvement?" "Yeah," Finn managed, suddenly very aware of every point where their bodies connected. "Much better." They remained like that for several moments, the embrace gradually becoming less awkward, more natural. Finn became aware of the steady rhythm of her breathing, slightly faster than a human's. Her tendrils had extended slightly, almost brushing against his face with feather-light touches. "Your heart rate has increased," Nishura observed, her voice softer than before. "Proximity conditioning seems to be working," Finn replied, attempting humor to mask his growing awareness of her. "Indeed." She tilted her head slightly, studying his face with scientific interest that couldn't quite conceal something else in her gaze. "The verification officers will utilize sensory equipment capable of detecting physiological responses. Current indicators suggest our performance would register as authentic." "Good to know." Finn found himself looking at her lips, wondering absently if Telerians kissed as humans did. The thought startled him with its intensity. As if reading his mind, Nishura spoke again. "Among bonded pairs, certain physical expressions of affection are expected. My research on human customs suggests mouth-to-mouth contact is common." "Kissing," Finn supplied. "Yes, it's common. Would this be advisable as part of our conditioning?" The question hung in the air between them, loaded with implications beyond their practical arrangement. Finn knew the sensible answer was yes. It would certainly add authenticity to their performance. But some deeper, more primitive part of him recoiled at the idea of treating such intimacy as merely another item on their preparation checklist. "I think," he said carefully, "that some things shouldn't be rehearsed. If the moment comes when that kind of authenticity is needed, we'll know." Something flickered in Nishura's expression. Relief? Disappointment? He couldn't tell. She nodded once. A logical approach. Spontaneity often registers as more genuine than practiced responses. She stepped back, breaking their embrace, and Finn felt oddly bereft. "We should rest now," she said. "Tomorrow will require all our resources." As they prepared for sleep, Nishura taking the cot this time despite Finn's protests. A new tension lingered between them. Not uncomfortable, exactly, but charged with unspoken possibilities. "Good night, Finn," Nishura said as the lights dimmed to night cycle levels. "Good night," he replied, settling onto his makeshift bed on the floor. Just before sleep claimed him, he added softly, "Wife." He thought he heard a soft intake of breath from the cot, but sleep overtook him before he could be certain. Morning arrived with the harsh buzz of Finn's alarm. He sat up groggily, his back protesting another night on the hard floor. Nishura was already awake, sitting cross-legged on the cot, her eyes closed in what appeared to be meditation. "The Judicial Overseer's team will begin inspections in 37 minutes, she said without opening her eyes. "We are in Section 4, which places us approximately 2 hours into their schedule." "Good morning to you too," Finn muttered, standing to stretch his stiff muscles. "How do you know their inspection route?" Nishura opened her eyes. "I accessed the station's administrative system during your sleep cycle. The inspection schedule was uploaded at 0400 hours. You hacked into—" Finn shook his head. "Never mind. I don't want to know. What's our strategy?" "Normalcy," she replied, rising from the cot with fluid grace. "We will proceed with standard morning activities. When inspectors arrive, we will present as a routine couple with nothing to hide." "Right. Routine." Finn ran a hand through his disheveled hair. "Because there's nothing more routine than a human maintenance worker and a Tellurian noblewoman playing house on a forgotten space station." "Sarcasm indicates stress," Nishura observed. "Perhaps you should utilize your calming techniques." "I don't have calming techniques." "Then perhaps you should develop some. Your elevated cortisol levels will be detectable to advanced scanners." Despite his anxiety, Finn laughed. "I've been married to you for 3 days, and you're already telling me to work on myself. That's authentically married, at least." A slight ripple passed through Nishura's tendrils. Amusement, he'd learned. "We should dress appropriately. First impressions will influence subsequent evaluation metrics." They prepared methodically. Nishura selected her simplest attire, a dark jumpsuit with minimal Tellurian styling, while Finn wore his cleanest uniform. They shared the tiny bathroom in a domestic dance that had become surprisingly coordinated after just a few days. As they waited for the inspection team, Finn noticed Nishura's tendrils coiling tightly against her scalp, a sign of tension he had come to recognize. "Hey," he said softly, reaching out to touch her arm. "It's going to be okay." She looked at him, genuine vulnerability in her indigo eyes. "If they invalidate our union." "They won't," he interrupted firmly. "We're legally married. You've planned for everything. We've prepared." He squeezed her arm gently. "Trust me." Something shifted in her expression, a softening, a moment of genuine connection beyond their practical arrangement. "I do," she said simply. The admission settled between them, weighty with implications neither was prepared to address. The moment was broken by a sharp knock at the door. "Inspection team," came a formal voice, opened by authority of the Judicial Overseer. Finn took a deep breath and shared one last look with Nishura. She nodded slightly, her posture straightening into the perfect blend of relaxed confidence. "Showtime," he murmured and pressed the door release. 3 figures entered the small quarters. 2 were clearly security personnel, wearing the distinctive gray uniforms of Dominion enforcement. The third, a tall, slender being with pale blue skin and elaborately braided silver hair, wore the formal robes of a judicial overseer. "Resident Finn Rilo?" the overseer inquired, voice melodious but cold. "That's me," Finn confirmed. The overseer's iridescent eyes shifted to Nishura. "And you claim to be Nishura Valquin, formerly of House Imperial Twilight, widow of Lord Xanthian, E.T. Lumina." "I am Nishura Rilo," she corrected smoothly. "But yes, those are my previous designations." The overseer's expression remained impassive, but Finn detected a flicker of irritation at Nishura's confidence. I am Judicial Overseer Carthex, authorized representative of the Dominion Central Authority and the Noble House Registry. He gestured to one of the security officers, who produced a small, cube-shaped device similar to Nishura's privacy field generator, but larger. This is a verification field, Carthex explained unnecessarily. It will monitor biological markers, pheromone patterns, and truthfulness indicators during our interview. Standard procedure for all census verifications. Of course, Finn said pleasantly. We have nothing to hide. The security officer activated the device, which emitted a soft hum as it projected an invisible field throughout the room. Finn felt a slight tingling on his skin, like static electricity. This dwelling is registered to a single occupant, Carthex began, consulting a data tablet. When did you establish cohabitation? 3 days ago, Finn answered honestly. After our marriage. A rather expedient union. Carthex's tone dripped with skepticism, especially considering station records show no prior interaction between you. Station records are incomplete, Nishura interjected. We met during my previous visit to EOS 9, 6 standard months ago. I was traveling incognito, using a diplomatic courier not listed on public manifests. Finn had to admire her ability to weave truth and fiction so seamlessly. They had indeed agreed on this cover story. A previous secret meeting, a connection formed, communication maintained through private channels. Convenient, Carthex observed. And your sudden decision to marry immediately following Lord Xanthian's death? The timing is remarkable. Not at all, Nishura replied calmly. My husband's declining health was well documented. I had made arrangements in anticipation of his passing, including contacting Finn, to avoid the consequences of the widow's protocol. Carthex stated flatly. To honor my heart's choice, Nishura countered, her voice taking on a warmth Finn had rarely heard. She moved closer to him, her hand finding his with natural ease. The protocol merely accelerated our timeline. The verification device pulsed briefly, and Carthex studied its readings with narrowed eyes. Finn realized with surprise that Nishura's statement had registered as truthful, not because of any clever deception, but because she had phrased it in a way that aligned with her genuine feelings. Clever. And you, Resident Rilo. Carthex turned his attention to Finn. What prompted you to accept this arrangement? A maintenance worker suddenly married to a noble house widow. Some might see opportunity. The implication was clear, and Finn felt a flare of genuine anger. What I saw was Nishura, he said firmly. Not her title, not her status. Just her. He squeezed her hand, drawing strength from her presence. And for the record, I didn't accept an arrangement. I married the woman I care about. The verification device pulsed again, and Carthex frowned slightly at its reading. Finn realized with a start that his statement had registered as truthful as well, because somewhere along the way, it had become the truth. The realization shook him. Physical compatibility between human and Tellurian physiology is limited, Carthex observed coldly. How do you address this aspect of your union? The question was deliberately invasive, designed to provoke embarrassment or hesitation that might indicate a fraudulent relationship. Finn felt Nishura tense beside him. Before she could respond with what would undoubtedly be a clinical explanation, Finn stepped forward. With respect, Overseer, that's between my wife and me. His voice was level but firm. Even census verification doesn't entitle you to details of our intimate life. A flicker of surprise crossed Carthex's features before his composure returned. The verification field requires certain biological markers to confirm legitimate pair bonding, which it can detect without explicit descriptions, Nishura pointed out, her voice cool and authoritative, the voice of a noble house daughter accustomed to command. Section 7.3 of the Verification Protocol specifically prohibits invasive questioning regarding intimate practices when relevant markers can be biometrically confirmed. Carthex's mouth tightened, but he did not pursue the line of questioning. Very well. The field will complete its assessment momentarily. He gestured to the security officers, who began scanning the small quarters with handheld devices. In the meantime, perhaps you can explain the lack of cohabitation indicators in this dwelling. There appears to be minimal integration of personal effects. It was true. They had had little time to create the appearance of shared living. Nishura's few possessions remained mostly in her bag, with little evidence of her presence throughout the room. "We've been focused on more important matters than decorating," Finn replied with a shrug. "And we're still sorting out storage in a space designed for one." He indicated the cramped quarters with a sweeping gesture. "Not exactly a noble house manner. I find the simplicity refreshing," Nishura added, and Finn was surprised by the genuine fondness in her voice. After a lifetime of excessive ornamentation and ceremonial spaces, there is honesty in this environment. One of the security officers approached Carthex, showing him readings from the handheld scanner. The overseer's expression darkened. "You are aware," he said carefully, "that falsification of a noble house union carries severe penalties, including neural recalibration for the offending parties?" "We are aware of the law," Nishura replied steadily, "and we have complied fully with its requirements." The verification field emitted a series of soft tones before shutting down. Carthex studied its final readings with evident displeasure. The field detects consistent biological markers indicating genuine pair bonding, he admitted reluctantly. However, the unusually expedient nature of this union warrants additional investigation. The registry has received a formal challenge from House Obsidian Vale regarding the legitimacy of this marriage. "On what grounds?" Nishura demanded, a flash of genuine alarm breaking through her composed exterior. "Suspected fraudulent intent," Carthex replied coldly. "A full hearing will be scheduled before the High Registry within." "There is no legal basis for such a challenge," Nishura interrupted, her voice taking on an edge of authority that echoed her noble house upbringing. "The widow's protocol explicitly permits remarriage within the designated time frame without qualification as to motivation. Our union was properly registered and meets all statutory requirements." Carthex's expression hardened. "The registry will make that determination, Lady Valquin." Rilo, both Finn and Nishura corrected simultaneously. A moment of genuine connection passed between them, unplanned and unscripted. The security officers exchanged glances. "Mrs. Rilo," Carthex amended with evident distaste. "Until the hearing, you will remain on EOS 9 under observation. Any attempt to depart will be considered admission of fraudulent intent." He gestured to the security officers. "We are finished here." As the inspection team departed, Finn closed the door behind them and leaned against it, exhaling slowly. "That could have gone better. It could have been significantly worse," Nishura countered, her tendrils now moving in agitated patterns. The verification field confirmed biological compatibility. That is crucial evidence in our favor. "But this hearing is a delaying tactic," she finished for him. "House Obsidian Vale knows our union is legally sound. They seek to extend proceedings beyond my protection window." She began pacing the small room, her movements graceful despite her evident tension. "We must prepare for the hearing immediately." Finn watched her, struck by how quickly she had shifted from vulnerable to strategic. Yet he had glimpsed something else during the verification, moments of genuine emotion, of connection between them that no amount of preparation could have manufactured. "Nishura," he said softly, interrupting her planning, "when I said I cared about you, the verification field registered it as true." She stilled, her back to him, tendrils freezing in place. Yes, the field was functioning correctly, meaning it wasn't just a good performance. Finn stepped closer to her. "Something's happened these past few days. Something real." Slowly, Nishura turned to face him, indigo eyes meeting his with an intensity that took his breath away. "I am unaccustomed to this," she admitted quietly. "In noble houses, unions are strategic. Emotions are inefficient." "Maybe," Finn acknowledged, "but they're also what just saved us in that verification. The field can't be fooled by good acting." "No," she agreed. "It cannot." They stood in silence, the weight of this realization hanging between them. It had been just 3 days, an absurdly short time to develop genuine feelings. Yet the circumstances had forced an intimacy, a vulnerability that might have taken months to achieve otherwise. What happens now? Finn asked finally. With this hearing, Nishura seemed to welcome the return to practical matters. We continue as before, but with greater caution. House. Obsidian Vale will have agents watching us, seeking any evidence of fraudulent intent. But our intent doesn't matter, right? You said the protocol doesn't care why we got married, only that we did. Technically correct, but the High Registry has discretion in unusual cases. Her expression darkened. House Obsidian Vale has significant influence within the registry. They will exploit any weakness. Finn considered this. Then we don't give them any weaknesses to exploit. We just be married. For real. Nishura's tendrils rippled in surprise. For real. Well, we already are legally, Finn pointed out. And the verification field confirmed there's something genuine between us. So instead of trying to perform a convincing marriage, why don't we just see what this actually is? Between us. The vulnerability that crossed Nishura's features made her look suddenly younger, less like a noble house diplomat and more like someone who, like Finn, had been alone too long. That would be uncharted territory, she said softly. I'm okay with that if you are. For a long moment, Nishura simply looked at him, as if searching for something in his expression. Then, with deliberate slowness, she reached out and placed her hand against his cheek, a gesture of simple intimacy they had not rehearsed. I find, she said carefully, that I am increasingly amenable to exploration. The warmth of her touch, the subtle current that seemed to pass between them, felt more real than anything Finn had experienced in years. Without overthinking, he leaned forward and gently pressed his lips to hers. The kiss was brief, tentative, a question more than a declaration. When he pulled back, Nishura's eyes remained closed for a moment, her tendrils moving in slow, graceful patterns he hadn't seen before. Was that acceptable? He asked uncertainly. Her eyes opened, a new warmth in their indigo depths. It was not dissimilar to Telerian practices, she replied, scientific precision giving way to a hint of teasing. Further research may be required to fully assess compatibility. Finn couldn't help but laugh. I'm willing to contribute to the scientific process. For the first time since they'd met, Nishura smiled fully, a genuine expression that transformed her face and sent an unexpected wave of feeling through Finn's chest. I believe, she said softly, that our hearing preparation can wait a few minutes longer. The kiss that followed was neither tentative nor brief, and required no rehearsal at all. The days leading up to the registry hearing passed in a curious blend of tension and discovery. Externally, they maintained vigilance, aware of the surveillance undoubtedly monitoring their movements. Privately, within the protection of Nishura's privacy field, they explored the unexpected connection that had formed between them. Finn learned that Telerian tendrils were extraordinarily sensitive, capable of detecting minute electromagnetic variations and responding to touch with remarkable expressiveness. Nishura discovered that humans communicated as much through touch as through words, with different contacts carrying distinct emotional signatures. They worked together during Finn's shifts, their cooperation now natural rather than practiced. In the evenings, they prepared for the hearing while simultaneously learning the genuine rhythms of shared life. Small moments took on unexpected significance. Finn fixing the environmental controls to better suit Nishura's preferred temperature range. Nishura applying her considerable intelligence to modifying Finn's tools for greater efficiency. The gradual migration of her few possessions throughout their shared space. 5 days after the initial inspection, they received formal notification. The registry hearing would take place the following morning aboard the diplomatic vessel. The timing was deliberate. Exactly 72 hours after their marriage, the minimum protection period would expire. House Obsidian Vale had orchestrated events perfectly. That evening, as they sat side by side on the cot reviewing legal precedents, Finn felt a weight descend on him. What happens if we lose? He asked quietly. Nishura's tendrils curled inward. A sign of distress she no longer tried to hide from him. The classification of unclaimed property would be retroactively applied. I would be remanded to House Obsidian Vale's custody immediately. And me, as the other party to a fraudulent union, you would face penalties. Given your status as a non-citizen of the Dominion, likely deportation rather than neural recalibration. She hesitated. Though House Obsidian Vale might pursue more severe consequences if they believe you knowingly participated in defrauding the registry. Finn took her hand, her cool fingers now familiar against his skin. Though we don't lose. The odds are not favorable, she admitted. House Obsidian Vale has submitted testimony from Lord Xanthian's personal physician, claiming advanced knowledge of his imminent death, suggesting premeditated evasion of the protocol. Is it true? Partially, Nishura acknowledged. I was aware his health was declining, though not the precise timing. I had indeed made contingency plans, but not specifically to marry me. No, her gaze met his. That was improvisation. Finn smiled despite the gravity of their situation. Pretty good improvisation, as it turns out. Her tendrils rippled in what he now recognized as affectionate amusement. Indeed, they prepared long into the night, reviewing arguments, anticipating challenges, rehearsing responses. When exhaustion finally overtook them, they slept side by side on the narrow cot. Nishura's form fitted against Finn's in a now-familiar arrangement that maximized the limited space. Morning arrived too quickly. They dressed carefully, Nishura in her most formal remaining attire, Finn in his cleanest uniform. The contrast between them remained stark, nobility and working class, alien and human. Yet somehow, it no longer seemed to matter. Ready? Finn asked as they prepared to leave their quarters. Nishura's tendrils settled into a determined pattern. Yes, the diplomatic vessel was opulent compared to EOS 9's utilitarian aesthetic. Gleaming corridors led to a formal chamber where representatives of the registry awaited. Carthex was present, along with two other officials Finn didn't recognize. Opposite them sat a Telerian male with obsidian-black tendrils and cold, calculating eyes, clearly the representative from House Obsidian Vale. Nishura Valquin, the central registry official, began. Rilo, she corrected firmly. Nishura Rilo. A flicker of annoyance crossed the official's features. The legitimacy of that designation is precisely what this hearing will determine. He gestured to seats opposite the panel. You may be seated. What followed was a grueling interrogation that lasted hours. Questions about timing, intention, prior communication, allegations of fraudulent purpose, detailed scrutiny of their brief relationship. Through it all, Finn and Nishura remained unified. Their responses consistent not because they had rehearsed, but because they spoke their truth, unconventional as it might be. The representative from House Obsidian Vale was particularly relentless, his questions designed to provoke contradiction or reveal calculation. When direct questioning failed to yield the desired results, he changed tactics. The protocol exists to prevent exactly this type of evasion, he argued. A noble house widow, fleeing her obligations, seeking refuge in a hasty union with an insignificant human. It makes mockery of our traditions. The protocol exists to ensure noble house properties remain properly aligned with legitimate succession, Nishura countered. My union with Finn Rilo violates neither the letter nor spirit of that purpose. I claim no succession rights to House Eternal Dawn's holdings. All properties and titles revert as the protocol intends. Yet you evade your own proper disposition as part of those holdings, the representative sneered. Finn felt anger surge through him. My wife is not property, he said, his voice dangerously quiet. Your wife is a noble house daughter who understood her position and obligations from birth, the representative replied dismissively. This convenient arrangement is recognized as legitimate by your own verification field, Finn interrupted. Or have you forgotten that part? The registry officials exchanged glances. Carthex cleared his throat. The verification did indeed confirm biological markers consistent with pair bonding. However, the timing remains suspect. The timing is irrelevant under the protocol, Nishura stated with the authority of someone who had studied these laws her entire life. Section 3.2 explicitly states that any valid union formed within the designated period satisfies the requirement, regardless of circumstances of formation. The officials conferred among themselves in hushed tones. The representative from House Obsidian Vale leaned forward, his black tendrils writhing in obvious agitation. If the registry permits this obvious circumvention, it will establish a dangerous precedent, he warned. Noble houses will lose a critical mechanism for maintaining proper succession and resource allocation. My marriage doesn't circumvent the purpose of the protocol, Nishura countered. It fulfills it precisely as intended, ensuring I am not left unclaimed and therefore subject to exploitation. She met the representative's gaze directly, which is, I believe, what truly concerns House Obsidian Vale. A tense silence followed her accusation. Finn reached for her hand, a gesture that had become natural over their days together. She accepted it without hesitation, her cool fingers interlacing with his. The lead registry official cleared his throat. We will deliberate on this matter privately. You will be summoned when a determination has been reached. As they were escorted from the chamber, Finn felt a crushing weight of uncertainty. They had argued their case as best they could, but the political influences at play were beyond his understanding. Nishura's expression remained composed, but he could feel the tension radiating from her. They were directed to a small waiting area, mercifully private. As soon as the door closed behind them, Nishura's controlled facade crumbled slightly, her tendrils coiling tightly in distress. It doesn't look good, she said quietly. The registry representatives are politically aligned with conservative factions. And the presence of a senior representative from House Obsidian Vale indicates significant resources have been deployed against us. Finn pulled her into a gentle embrace. Hey, we've done everything we can. The law is on our side. Law is rarely immune to influence, she replied, but leaned into his embrace, her form fitting against his with a familiarity that belied their short time together. Whatever happens, Finn said softly, I don't regret any of this. Meeting you, marrying you, it's the first time in years I felt like I was doing something that mattered. Nishura's tendrils shifted, brushing lightly against his face in a gesture he had come to recognize as profound affection. I selected you because you were invisible, she admitted. I did not anticipate how clearly I would come see you. The simple honesty of her words struck Finn deeply. He had been invisible for so long, first by circumstance, then by choice. To be seen, truly seen, by someone like Nishura was a gift he hadn't known he needed. Whatever they decide, he promised, I'm not letting them take you. Before she could respond, the door opened. An attendant stood there, expression neutral. The registry has reached its determination. You will return to the chamber now. They walked back hand in hand, braced for the worst but facing it together. The registry officials sat in the same formal arrangement, their expressions unreadable. The representative from House Obsidian Vale looked coldly triumphant, which sent a chill through Finn's core. Nishura Valquin E.T. Lumina, Finn Rilo, the lead official began formally. After careful consideration of all presented evidence and relevant statutes, this registry has determined that your union, while unusually timed, meets all legal requirements specified under the Widow's Protocol. Finn felt Nishura's hand tighten in his, but her expression remained carefully controlled. Furthermore, the official continued, the verification field's confirmation of genuine biological compatibility cannot be dismissed. Therefore, your marriage is hereby confirmed as valid and binding under Dominion law. The representative from House Obsidian Vale rose abruptly. This is an outrage. The evidence clearly indicates. The evidence indicates a legally formed union that satisfies all statutory requirements. The official interrupted firmly. House Obsidian Vale's challenge is rejected. This determination is final and binding. Relief flooded through Finn so powerfully that he felt momentarily lightheaded. Beside him, Nishura maintained her composure, though her tendrils moved in patterns that suggested intense emotion. "We thank the registry for its fair application of the law," she said formally, her diplomatic training evident in every measured word. The official nodded curtly. "This hearing is concluded. The registry vessel will depart EOS 9 within 6 standard hours. You're free to continue your lives." The slight pause suggested his personal opinion might differ from the official determination, but it no longer mattered. They had won. As they left the diplomatic vessel, walking through EOS 9's familiar, dingy corridors, the reality of their victory slowly sank in. The immediate threat was gone. House Obsidian Vale could not claim Nishura. Their marriage was legally recognized and protected. "I can't believe we actually pulled it off," Finn said as they entered their quarters, the doors sliding shut behind them. "The verification field was the decisive factor," Nishura observed, her analytical mind still processing the outcome. "Without confirmation of genuine biological compatibility, the registry might have ruled differently despite the legal arguments." Finn smiled. "So what you're saying is, we won because this gesture between them is real." Nishura's tendrils moved in a pattern he now recognized as her equivalent of a smile. "Essentially, yes." "So what happens now?" he asked, the question encompassing far more than just their immediate plans. Nishura was quiet for a moment, her indigo eyes thoughtful. "The immediate danger has passed. I am no longer at risk of classification as unclaimed property." She hesitated. "The terms of our arrangement have been fulfilled. You are under no obligation to continue." "That's not what I'm asking." Finn interrupted gently. "I know I'm not obligated. I'm asking what you want to happen now." The vulnerability that crossed her features made his heart ache. For all her strength, her intelligence, her noble house training, this simple emotional honesty was perhaps the most challenging territory for her to navigate. "I find," she said carefully, "that I am reluctant to dissolve our union." Finn stepped closer, taking both her hands in his. "That's very formally put," he teased gently. "Want to try again?" Nishura's tendrils rippled in a mixture of embarrassment and amusement. "I do not wish to leave," she said more directly. "I wish to remain with you, Finn Rilo. Not because of legal necessity or strategic advantage, but because She paused, searching for words, "because I have discovered something unexpected in our time together. Something I value more than my former position or possessions." "And what's that?" he asked softly, though he thought he knew the answer. "Connection," she replied simply. "Genuine connection. I had not experienced it before." Finn brought one hand up to gently cup her face. "I don't want you to leave either." The admission was easy now, natural. "These past days have been insane, terrifying, and more alive than I've felt in years." An unusual endorsement, she observed, but her tendrils moved in patterns of pleasure. "I've been surviving on this station," Finn continued. "Just getting through each day. Since you arrived, I've started living again. Feeling again." He smiled. "Even if it began with you basically blackmailing me into marriage, I prefer to consider it an aggressive negotiation," she replied, her voice warm with humor. "With an unexpectedly favorable outcome." "Very favorable," he agreed, and kissed her, no longer as part of their performance or preparation, but simply because he wanted to, because it felt right. When they parted, a comfortable silence settled between them, free from the urgent pressures that had defined their relationship thus far. Eventually, Finn spoke again. "So, what does a Telerian noble house daughter and a human maintenance worker do now that they're officially married with no one trying to tear them apart?" Nishura considered this. "We have options. We could remain on EOS 9, though the station's resources are limited. We could seek passage to a Dominion world where my remaining connections might secure us more comfortable circumstances. Or," she hesitated, "or, fin proempted. There is Earth," she suggested tentatively. "I have never visited a human world, and you have been absent from yours for some time." The suggestion caught Finn by surprise. "Earth. Home." a place he had convinced himself he would never see again. I don't know if that's possible, he said honestly. My record with the Earth Defense Force can be addressed through diplomatic channels, Nishura finished confidently. My status may be diminished, but I retain certain privileges. A formal petition for clemency, citing your service to a Dominion citizen, would likely be successful. Finn shook his head in amazement. You've been thinking about this. I consider multiple possibilities. It is habit. Her expression softened. But yes, I have thought about your return to Earth. You speak of your sister in your sleep. Elise. The thought of seeing her again, of perhaps making amends, sent a pang through Finn's chest. It's been so long. I don't know if she'd even want to see me. Family connections are complex, Nishura acknowledged. But they can be resilient. Like marriage connections? He asked with a small smile. Precisely. Her tendrils moved in a delicate pattern he was still learning to interpret, something like hopeful anticipation. We need not decide immediately. We have time now. Time. Such a simple concept. Yet it felt like an extraordinary luxury after the desperate rush of the past days. Time to know each other, to explore their unexpected connection, to decide their future together. First things first, Finn said decisively. If we're staying married, we need a bigger place. This room was cramped for one person, let alone two. A practical consideration, Nishura agreed. Though I found our proximity not entirely unpleasant. Neither have I, Finn admitted with a grin. But I think we've earned a little comfort, don't you? Indeed. She glanced around the tiny quarters that had been their entire world for the past days. Though I find I have developed a certain appreciation for this space. It has significance. Finn understood. This cramped, utilitarian room had witnessed the beginning of something neither of them had anticipated. Something genuine and unexpected that had flourished in the most unlikely circumstances. Maybe we'll keep it, he suggested whimsically. For sentimental reasons. Sentimentality is considered inefficient in noble houses, Nishura informed him with mock seriousness. Well, you're not in a noble house anymore, Finn reminded her, pulling her close. You're in House Rilo now, and we're very sentimental. House Rilo, she repeated, testing the words. I find I prefer it to my former designations. Good. Finn kissed her lightly. Because I'm pretty sure it's permanent. Her tendrils curled in pleasure. That would be acceptable. Over the following weeks, they established a new normal. Nishura's diplomatic skills and remaining connections secured them improved quarters in EOS 9's administrative section. Still modest by noble house standards, but palatial compared to Finn's maintenance room. Finn continued his work, but with Nishura's assistance, he was able to implement improvements to the station's systems that earned him recognition from management. They explored their relationship without the pressure of imminent threat, learning each other's histories, preferences, and quirks with the leisure of a couple who expected to spend years, not days, together. Nishura taught Finn the complex political structures of the Dominion worlds, while he introduced her to simple pleasures she had never experienced in her structured noble house existence. 3 months after their emergency marriage, they received confirmation. Finn's petition for clemency had been approved by Earth authorities. His record with the Earth Defense Force was formally amended. The charges of insubordination reduced to a minor infraction that had been satisfied by his time on EOS 9. I can't believe you actually pulled it off, Finn said as they reviewed the official documentation. I informed you diplomatic channels would be effective, Nishura replied, her tendrils moving in smug satisfaction. The Dominion values its relationship with Earth. A minor adjustment to one former officer's record was a simple concession. Finn shook his head in amazement. So we could go to Earth, if we wanted to. Yes. Nishura studied him carefully. Do you want to? It was a question he had been contemplating since the possibility first arose. Earth represented both his past and potentially his future, a place of painful memories, but also of connections he had thought severed forever. I think, he said slowly, that I'd like to try. Not permanently, necessarily, but to visit, to see Elise, if she's willing. I have already located her, Nishura admitted. She resides in the Pacific Northwest region. She's an engineer, like you. She has 2 children. I'm an uncle. The revelation hit Finn with unexpected force. How did you find all this? I have resources, Nishura said simply. And I thought you might wish to know. Finn was silent for a moment, processing this information. Nieces or nephews he had never met. A sister who had built a life while he was exiled among the stars. The distance suddenly felt both vast and bridgeable. Thank you, he said finally, taking Nishura's hand, for giving me the chance to go back. She corrected gently. To go back. I will accompany you, if you wish it. The thought of Nishura on Earth, experiencing his home world, meeting his family, it created a strange but pleasant ache in his chest. I definitely wish it. Though I should warn you, Earth might be a bit overwhelming after noble houses and space stations. I am adaptable, she reminded him with a subtle movement of tendrils that he now recognized as her version of a smile. And curious about your world. Then it's settled. We'll go to Earth. The decision felt right, a step forward rather than backward. As they prepared for their journey over the following weeks, Finn found himself reflecting on the extraordinary sequence of events that had led them here. A desperate alien widow appearing at his door with an impossible proposal. A hasty marriage of convenience transformed into something genuine and deep. Legal battles and biometric verifications and diplomatic maneuvering. And through it all, a connection neither had expected to find. The night before they were scheduled to depart EOS 9, Finn found Nishura standing at the viewport in their quarters, gazing out at the stars. He joined her, slipping an arm around her waist in a gesture that had become comfortably familiar. Having second thoughts? He asked gently. No, she replied. I'm contemplating probabilities. Sounds serious. Her tendrils moved in the pattern he now knew indicated thoughtful amusement. The statistical likelihood of our current circumstances is vanishingly small. The precise sequence of events required to bring us to this moment defies rational calculation. In other words, we got lucky, Finn simplified. Extremely lucky, she agreed. Yet I find myself unwilling to attribute our situation merely to random chance. What then? Fate? Destiny? I didn't think Tellurians were the superstitious type. We are not, she affirmed. But we do recognize patterns. And sometimes, when patterns demonstrate extraordinary harmony despite improbable origins. She paused, searching for the right words. Sometimes what appears as random chance may be something more significant. Finn smiled, turning her gently to face him. Are you saying we were meant to find each other? I am saying, she replied carefully, that in a universe of infinite possibilities, we have discovered something remarkable. Whether by design or chance seems less important than acknowledging its value. Its value, Finn repeated. And what would that be exactly? Nishura's tendrils reached out, brushing his face in the intimate gesture that had become their unique expression of affection. Connection, she said simply. Understanding. Belonging. She hesitated, then added softly, love. The word hung between them, not feared or avoided, but simply acknowledged as the natural conclusion to their extraordinary journey. Love, Finn agreed, pulling her closer. Definitely worth crossing the universe for. As they stood together, silhouetted against the vast starfield, Finn reflected on the absurd proposal that had started it all. Marry me. I'll warm your bed, she had said, offering a coldly practical arrangement for mutual benefit. Yet here they were, months later, their lives intertwined in ways neither could have anticipated. And as Nishura leaned into his embrace, her form fitting perfectly against his, Finn recognized that her promise had been fulfilled, though not in the way either of them had expected. She had indeed warmed his bed. But more importantly, she had warmed a heart he had thought long cold, bringing light and purpose back to a life he had resigned to shadows. Ready for Earth? He asked softly. Ready, she confirmed, her indigo eyes meeting his with certainty. Tomorrow they would begin a new chapter together. But tonight, in this moment suspended among the stars, they were exactly where they needed to be, found, connected, and no longer alone.